Information in there. Okay. Today we're going to start on Samach Gimel, base at 63b.
With the Mishnah?
With the Mishnah, yeah. Kiddushin. Correct, right? That's where we left off yesterday. Samach Gimel? Yeah. Okay. So the Mishnah says like this: thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. That's what we're learning. We should have basic English. And the Mishnah says, "Kidashti espiti v'eni yedei lemi kidashtiya." Talking about a father. The father is allowed to marry off his daughter, except to give, to accept the betrothal money from a chassan if his daughter's under 12. He said, I've accepted money from someone, but I can't remember who it was. Okay. So, one of those jokes, they had a joke about this, I don't remember it. Something about where they couldn't remember who. Anyway, okay, so someone shows up and he says, "Ani Kiddushin, I'm the one that gave you the money to marry your daughter." So Naaman, we trust him. We say that he's actually the one. Let me just mute this 1 second. Okay. What happens if let's say two people show up? Okay, now this becomes a problem. So Shneim nice can get. Both of them need to give a divorce. And if they want, one person can give the get and the other person will do the marriage. You follow? So the father's trusted to say that he married her. Any individual is trusted to say that he's the one. And if there's two people, then they decide which one will marry, which one will give the get. I'm a Rav. Yeah, but the father says, I married my daughter to someone, but I can't remember who. So that's a very
can't give back the
she doesn't have to, well, you can't give it back. You have to get a get. How do you get a get from someone that you don't even know? You don't even know who it is. It could be anyone in the world. So
like announce it in the show.
Yeah, announce it in the show, right? It's probably selling local, right? So just have everyone write a get. The cipher would have a blast. So she's no longer permitted to a coin? Yeah, she's for sure not permitted to a coin, right?
They're both coins.
Well, if she's divorced, then that's oh. If they're both kayanim, one of them she's going to be divorced from, one of them she's going to be married to. It sounds like there's a problem because we don't. Okay, I'm a Rav. So Rav says neman litin get bein neman lichnes. At the beginning of the Mishnah, we said that if the father says, "I married my daughter to someone, but I can't remember who it was," so and then someone shows up and says that it was me, we don't really trust him to marry this woman. We only trust him to give her a get, and then she could be permitted to marry someone else. We don't trust him that he's actually the one. Maybe it's making it up. Maybe he desires her, so he's just saying this. And why? So he's believed that he's going to let her marry someone else by giving her a divorce because means that a person won't sin if he gets nothing from it. A person only sins because he had a temptation, but because there's no fulfillment of anything. He doesn't get any satisfaction from this. So he wouldn't. Why would he sin for someone else? What's he going to gain over here? That someone else can marry her? Obviously, he's not sinning. But we don't trust him to marry this woman because maybe as his Yetzer Hara is overpowering him. He wants to be with her. And so he said, it was me. He didn't see anyone answering right away. So he said, okay, it was me. The announcement wasn't shul. I married does anyone know who it was? So he says it was me. Ravasi Amar Afneman Lichnes. Ravasi says, no, he is allowed to marry her. Okay.
That case that two people come forward.
That's going to be problematic because over there we say that one of them can marry. It's problematic for Rav.
They wouldn't ask like, oh, how was the money given? That kind of like when he's found, you put up a sign and try to find out.
Right. It was probably so standard that there was no
cameras.
It was the witnesses aren't showing up. We don't have the witnesses here to say. So Umayda Ravasi agrees, he admits. So all of this machlekes Rav and Ravasi was if the father says, I can't remember who it was, and then a man shows up and says it was me. Rav says that the man cannot marry her, he can only give her a get, and Ravasi says the man can. But let's say the woman says, the girl says, I accepted Kiddushin from someone and I can't remember who it was. So then we don't trust the man to say that it was me. We don't trust him at all. Even Ravasi would agree to that. That he can't marry her. Why? So the reason for this is because she doesn't want to be alone her whole life. So when he comes up and he says that it was me, so she'll cover up for him. Even if someone else later on says, what are you talking about? It was me. I was the one that gave you that ring. So she'll say, no, it wasn't. It was the first guy. So he feels protected to lie. He feels that he'll be covered because he's saving this woman from being an aguna.
Can she say, no, that's not the one? Or something? Keep him back.
Probably, but if she doesn't say that, then we still don't trust him that it was him. If it's him against her, if it's her statement that she doesn't remember, and then he comes up, we don't trust him. But if it's the father's statement that he doesn't remember and the girl wasn't involved, then we do trust him, according to Ravasi. Because the father might say, it wasn't you. And so he would be afraid to do it if it wasn't really him. Ravasi says it must be that it was him. Tinan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ratzu echad neisen get v'echad kainas. That it says clearly that if there's two people, one of them says that it was me that gave the Kiddush, another one says it was me. So the halach is that one gives a get and one of them marries her. Umar says, Tiyufta de Rav. This is the most obvious question on Rav. Rav says that the guy that shows up and says it was me is not allowed to marry her. Here we're saying that if there's two people, one of them is allowed to marry her. Clearly, we're trusting people that they're the chassan. So Amalach Rav would respond to you. Shani hasam kivin de ka'achar ba'dei yertusi mirtas. Over there's two people. By two people, if he wasn't saying the truth, then he would have been afraid to say that it was me. On the other hand, though, if there's two people, one of them is obviously lying, but we're ignoring that. So what we're saying is like this. It could be both of them lying, right? Saying is that there's two people here. And one of them is afraid to do the marriage. One of them only wants to do the get. And the other one agrees to do the marriage. So what we're assuming is that the one that's afraid to do the marriage, he was the one that's probably the liar. And the one that's ready to do the marriage, he's probably the real one. That's what we're thinking. So that's why over there's more of a reason to believe the person that it's him, because there's another guy that's there that he doesn't. If he was lying, he wouldn't know if the other guy is the real guy, right? Someone over here that's going to find out because there is a real guy here, right? So because there's someone else there, so that's why Rav would trust the person that it was him, and he's the one that gave the Kiddushin. Tanya Kavasei de Ravasi. We have a brisa that supports Ravasi. It doesn't mean that we're going to paskin like Ravasi, although it looks like we do. But because Rav doesn't need a brisa to support him, Rav was a Tanu Palik. Rav can say I argue on everyone. He was was on that level. So, but anyway, there's a brisa that does support Ravasi, and it does look like the halachas like Ravasi. Do you have it? Does it comment over there in the Quran? The halachas like. Okay, the brisa says that Kidashtia spiti v'eni delami Kidashtia. If someone says I married off my daughter, I betrothed her to someone, but I can't remember who. And someone comes and says it was me. So afnem and lichnes says clearly that the guy is trusted that he could marry her. Kansa, he marries her, and someone else shows up. There's a nightmare. Says that it was really me. Like that fellow that showed up, it doesn't have the power to make her prohibited. The woman says, the girl says that I was betrothed to someone, but I can't remember to who. And someone shows up and says it was me. Then we don't trust him to be the chassan because she would cover up for him if he was lying, because he came in as her savior, to save her from being an aguna.
The first example, when the father doesn't know and one man steps up, then we go like Ravasi, where the person doesn't have to betroth her a second time. But when two people come up, the one that is going to marry her has to betroth her a second time.
1 second. What do you mean the second? You're adding in a 1 point that they have to do it again.
When it's two people, the one that's going to marry her has to betroth her again. And when it's one person, it's assumed to be good, and no betrothal has to be done. And
so we're trusting. We are accepting Ravasi. The only thing you're adding is that when it says echad kainas, is another betrothal. I thought echad kainas meant that he does a nesuin. Interesting. Okay. He uses the word betrothal the second time, or it says that he does the marriage. Okay. Okay, fine, I got it. Okay. One of my brother's events, for the senior citizens, so he had once this comedian over there. So I forgot this. Yeah, his name is Russell. Did Agent MS. I forgot his Ruvain Russell. Anyway, so he said this at this show. So people sitting over this, one person turns to the other and says, "Do you know who I am?" So the person says, "I'm not really sure, but if you ask at the front desk, they could tell you." Anyway. Okay. So they have a question. Mao liskal al yadai. Mao liskal al yadai. Let's say the father said that I've accepted Kiddushin for my daughter. We trust the father. That's correct. So what happens if she then lives with another man? How do you know that man wasn't the one? Maybe the father says that he wasn't the one. Somehow we know that that this guy is not the one. Does she get skila? This is a little complicated because she would get stoned based on the testimony of one person, the father. The father's the one that said that she's married, and now she's committing adultery. Witness to the act, but the witness to the act it's only adultery based on the fact that she was married. Who said she's married? We don't have witnesses that she's married. We only have the father's word. Father claims there's witnesses, but we don't know the witnesses.
And in the case that is the right man, that would
Yeah, then that would be,
seal the
yeah.
marriage.
Then we have it. So Rav says, ain't cycling. Rav says you can't trust just one father, one person to get skila, to get stoned. Ravasi Amar cycling. Ravasi says, no, you do trust the father. You trusted the father for the marriage. You could trust the father for the skila. Rav Amar ain't cycling. Rav says he can't give her skila. Skila means stoning. Rav says he can't give her stoning. Ki hamne rachman alav. When did the Torah, the Eibishter, Rachman is the Eibishter, the merciful one, when did the merciful one give the trustworthiness to the father, that we trust what the father says? That's Li'isura. That's only to make her prohibited on everyone else. To actually say over here Li'isura. Yeah, to make her permitted on everyone else. But but for a death penalty, that the Torah didn't give that power to the father, that he could just have her put to death, just because of something that he said. Ravasi Amar cycling. Ravasi says, no, you do get skila. The father gave the trustworthiness, that that ability to make that statement, the Torah gave to the father. Okay. Amar Ravasi. Ravasi says, Ravasi says that I'll admit to you that if it's the woman that says I've accepted it, then she doesn't get skila.
Fine, if the father marries a daughter,
Well, only the first one is effective. No, the first one's the marriage. The second one wasn't a marriage. But then if she lives with another man, now if we have witnesses there, so we're trusting the witnesses. But here we're saying that we don't have the witnesses. No one ever told us that this is accurate. So we suspect to the father's word. But Ravasi says, no, it's more than just suspect to the father's words. We actually trust the father that she's a married woman. Ravasi says, Hani Shmaitza Didi, my halachas that I'm telling you now, Maraf Sanigri. You ever heard that expression? Maraf Sanigri? Maraf Sanigri means it's usually you say like earth shattering or something. This is roof shattering. That means it's shocking. It's totally shocking. Maraf Sanigri. It's an expression that Talmud commentaries use when they want to say like a huge chiddush. They say a roof breaker.
Hurricane hit. I mean,
no,
why does it choose the roof?
I'm not sure why it's something like that. Okay, now he's going to explain what the problem is with this statement, but he's going to say nevertheless. The reason why it's surprising is Hashta Uma b'makim she'imba lichnes kindness. According to Ravasi, if the father says that I married off my daughter to someone, and then a fellow shows up and says, yes, it was me. According to Ravasi, that person is allowed to marry this girl. And I marry cycling. Amrit cycling. And if she would live with someone else, would say that she gets the death penalty. So makam she'imba lichnais ain kindness. If the girl says that I've married to someone and I can't remember who, and the guy shows up and says it was me, we don't trust the guy, and we say that she can't get married. Ain a dinsha cycling. Shouldn't it be all the more so that if she would have live with someone else, so that she should get skila? Now the logic in this is like this: why are we trusting this guy when the father says I married off my daughter? Why are we trusting this chassan to say it was him? Probably because we don't believe the father so much that he really married off his daughter. So if we would believe the father more, then we would need a better proof that it was really him. But we don't believe the father so much that he really married his daughter. And so we're going to believe this guy that say, okay, worst comes to worst. Okay, he's marrying her now. Big deal. But when the girl says that she's married, so we really trust her. Now we don't trust the guy that shows up that says that it was me, because we really trusted that she's married. We need to have a real proof who it really is. That's the case. Then if she lives with someone else and she's the one that said that she was married, of her we trust much more. For sure she should get skila. If the father said that she's married, then the father, and she lives with someone else, then you shouldn't get skila. If the reason why we trust the guy is because of the weakness of the father's testimony, so then it really doesn't make sense. So that's what Ravasi is saying over here, that it's meraf senigri. But the halacha is, according to Ravasi, exactly the opposite. That we trust the man when the father says that I married her off to someone. We trust the man. And nevertheless, when the father says that I married her off, if she lives with someone else, she still gets skila. And when the daughter says I'm married to someone, we don't trust the man and who it is, and she doesn't get skila. She doesn't get the death penalty if she lives with someone else. So Ravasi explains it. He says, that explanation is not accurate because it just has to do with whatever the Torah says. The Torah says the father's trusted, and so trust the father. Her, we don't trust. When she says that she's married, we don't trust her. That we would trust her to say that she's prohibited to anyone else, but not for the death penalty. It's sort of like, did I see this in the Rashi here? Why is she prohibited? Because of Shavya Nafshe. If a person says that, whatever, this food is not kosher or something, that's more, we trust him. Person can make something prohibited on himself by saying that he doesn't trust that this is kosher. So okay, you don't trust it, so don't eat it. So if she claims that she's prohibited to anyone else, so say, okay, you're prohibited to anyone else, so don't get married. Okay, have it your way. It's not that we really believe. It's not that that's the rule. It's just you're saying that. Okay, so have it your way. Yeah, that's your thing. There's a machlokes if Shavi Nafshecha Tichad D'Isura, if this concept is like a nether, or if it's an actual rule. That's,
I was going to say this little old lady, she's around 90. She's got a number of concentration camp survivor who lives by me on Hollywood Beach, right off the boardwalk. I always wanted to buy her something. So yesterday I go out because they have that little kosher pizza shop there. And as I'm walking there, I see her sitting on the bench, and I said, Myra, I'm going to the kosher store right here to get some. Can I get you some? She has this nice smile. She says, no, thank you. I said, I can't do anything. She's Alibaba. She goes, I only eat in my house. So it's like that kind of thing.
That's why she's so old. She only eats in her house. That's how she made it. Okay. So Rav Chisda Amar. Rav Chisda has his own opinion here. Rav Chisda says we have Rav, Ravasi, and Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda Amar echad zeh v'echad zeh ein cyclin. Whether the father said that he married off his daughter, whether the girl said that she married herself off, there's no skila. There's no skila. What's the Rav Chisda l'tamei? In other words, if she lives with someone else, there's no death penalty. Rav Chisda follows his explanation. Rav Chisda says that if a man says, my son is 9 years old. My daughter is 3 years old. Now that's the age that relations would be considered actual relations. A boy that's 9 and a girl that's 3. So neman lekarban. So then he's trusted that they should have to bring a karban if there was any sin that was committed. However, but he's not trusted for other punishments. As the father has a certain trustworthiness about the age of his children, but not 100%. It's not for the death penalties and or even for other punishments.
What if the mother said the mother to know exactly what else?
Yeah. I think it's really the father. The father's really the one that's trusted. Rav Chisda is saying that. So how do we know? According to Rav Chisda, he's not trusted 100%. So how do we know if we don't trust the father? Yeah, not so simple. If there's other signs that he's a gadol, the signs that he's a gadol, then that's fine. But when you're talking about a year 9 or 8, but there's no real sign for that. Is he 9 years old or is he 8 years old? That you can't tell. That's not so simple. How to trust the how to figure that out. Tanika Vaseder Rav Chisda, there's a brisa that says, according to Rav Chisda, Benize ben Yud Gimel Shana v'Yom Echad. My son is 13 years old. Biti Zu Bas Yud Beis Shana v'Yom Echad. My daughter is 12 years old. Neman l'nadarim l'charamim l'akdeshes l'erkin avlei l'makas l'leinshin. Even when it comes to bar and bas mitzvah, he's only trusted for nadarim, for vows, and haramim if they said something is hektish or like there's different types of hektish for the kayanim or for the hektish. Larachim if they're saying their age for to vow the pledge, right? But he's not trusted that they should get punished. Rashi says they're here, they have pubic hair, but the only thing is the pubic hair had to come after they were 12 or 13, not before. So the father would be saying that it came after, it wasn't there before. If it comes before, it's considered like shuma. I think that means that it's like the hair that grows on a mole, which is not considered the hair that shows on puberty. Anyway, okay. Next Mishnah. Kidashti espiti, kidashti v'gerashti kshiktana. Very ktana. He says, I married off my daughter. I married her. I accepted Kiddushin, and I also accepted the divorce. And she's still a child. Basically, he just testified that his daughter's a divorcee. So Neman, he's trusted. Now, what is that relevant for? That she can't marry a Kayan. He's saving her from this Mr. Cohen that is trying to marry. He's trying to marry her. He says, I'm sorry, I married her and I divorced her. She can't marry him.
She's after 12.
No, she's younger. She's a Ketana. She's still a Ketana.
I thought, like, I forget the name where the woman walked out.
That's by the Mian if the father didn't marry her, the brothers married her.
Yeah,
The father wasn't
by
around.
Mian, she's not considered a Jewish.
Right. Right. She would not be a Grusha. Let's say Kidashtia Begerashtia Kshiktana Vari Gedaila. Let's say he says, I married her off and I accepted the divorce when she was a child, but now she's already an adult. That's when he's saying this now. Now he's not trusted anymore. We'll see the explanation. The Gemara is originally going to think that he's trusted because if it wasn't saying the truth, then he could just do it right now. He could just marry her off right now because she's still a Ketana. That's why he's trusted. It's called biyadai. If he wanted to, he could do it right now. But now that she's an adult, so he can't do it right now. So we don't trust him anymore. His nemanis is coming from biyadai. That he's able to do it right now. So therefore we have to trust him for what he's saying that he did it already. The Gemara is going to reject it, but meanwhile, that's the explanation. Nishpe supedisia. She was captured, but I redeemed her. Now, a girl that's captured, we assume that she lived with the what's it called, the captors. So ben shiktana ben shigadayla in an eman, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult, he's not trusted. Okay. Now that's what we're thinking now is that he doesn't have any right to. He has no ability to make her captured. That's not something that the Torah gives him a right to do. The Torah gives him a right to marry her off. So he doesn't give her a right to make her captured by someone. So therefore, he has no trustworthiness to say that she was or she wasn't because he can't do that. That's not in his power. The Gemara asks, what's the difference? At the beginning, we said that we trusted the father to say that she can't marry a Kayan. And at the end, by the Nishbase Padisia, that he's not trusted, she's captured, he's not trusted to say that she can't marry a Kayan. So the Gemara answers, Reisha biyada, Seifa lav biyada. The beginning of the Mishnah is marriage. The father's trusted to do the marriage. The father has that power to do the marriage. But in the Sefer, he has no power to make her captured. The Gemara says, "V'loi." He doesn't have a power to make her invalid to a kohen by saying that one of the ways to make her invalid is saying that she's captured. But if he wanted just to make her invalid to a kohen, he could do the following.
It's just it's referring to him.
Yeah.
Even though it's a
Yadei. Yadei. You have to
So I
say
see
it. It's
Rashi's
Aramaic.
because I see a Rashi's putting it. Says
Yadai.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our Gemara is saying the Yadei. We pronounce it Yadei to get the Yud in there because the Yud is masculine.
Right.
And
It's Biyadai.
in Hebrew, it would be Biyadai. Yeah, we've adjusted the in the Gemara our pronunciation to fit. Yeah, I don't know if in the original Aramaic if the pronunciation was different between the masculine, but the writing was different. The Yud, so we pronounce it Biyadei or you ignore the hey, and Biyada would mean her. All right.
I noticed a lot of mentions that this one is accepted if it's done immediately. The betrothal and the divorce is like done immediately. Like if there's enough time that she's considered a married woman, that her father was part of it.
So Hill is pointing out that I think what he's saying is that if there would be other sources, another source that she's a married woman, then the father wouldn't be trusted to say that he accepted the divorce without witnesses. I think if there's a chazaka that she's divorced, or the chazaka that she's married, then you'd have to prove that she's divorced. Here we're talking about that there was no established chazaka. It's all his own word, right? She wasn't married long enough that anyone should know about it, that this should be considered a chazaka. So it's basically, if the father is the sole source of this story, so then he's trusted. Okay.
This is also when there is somebody else employing the ones married.
Yeah, would it be relevant for a kohen?
But if there weren't be at that time employing the ones,
then she could marry someone else. Yeah.
Then we trust it.
Yeah. You would say probably a peshas or a peshit. Who told us that she's married? The father. Who told us that she's divorced? The father. Right? We're not going to divide up his. We didn't know that she's married from any other source. So the only thing is that the father is the source to say that she can't marry a kohen. Now there is a difference. Rashi speaks this out. What happens when we say that she's captive? So not only can she marry a kohen, but she can't eat truma even if her father is a kohen, because she becomes puzzle from eating truma. If she just is a divorcee, so she can't eat truma if her husband was a kohen, and the father's a Yisrael, but she can eat truma if the father's a kohen. But if she's a captive, then even if the father's a kohen, she can't eat truma because she becomes puzzle. She becomes invalidated from marrying any kohen. In other words, she becomes puzzle. If she's a divorcee, I know she can't marry a kohen, but she still goes back to her father's house and eats truma. But if she becomes puzzle because she lived with someone that's prohibited to marry a kohen, that's a different type of psul, and she can't eat truma even if her father's a kohen. Similar to if she becomes a halala. She becomes a halala, she also can't eat truma. So now the Gemara asks, but 1 second, if the father wanted to put her in that status of being a captive, to have that same status where she can't eat truma, he could have married her to a halal, and she would become invalid from ever marrying a kohen, and she would also be puzzled from truma. He could have, if the whole issue is biyadai or biyadei, if it's in his hand to be able to do it, he still has the power to do it, and she's still a ketana. At least that was one of the cases in the last case of the Mishnah. It says nishpis b'disiya ben she ketana ben she kedayla, whether she's a child or whether she's a minor or whether an adult. And now you're telling me that she's not, that the father's not trusted. Kasha. That's not a question. This Mishnah is following Karab Destoi Ben Yehuda Dama B'nai Yisrael Mikveh Tara L'Chalalan. What we're saying is that even if she was a halala, she's even not if she even if she married even if the father married her to a halala, she does not become a halal. And this opinion that comes up later in Kiddushin, that she doesn't become a halal, and therefore the father is not accomplishing anything by saying that he married her to a halal. She's still permissible to eat truma. Okay, but he could have married her to a mamzer. Now she's for sure prohibited to a kayan, and if she's prohibited to a kayan in such a way, so then she can't eat truma either. So we said Rabbi Akiva, the main Kiddushin types in B'chai V'Lavan. We're following Rabbi Akiva's view that says that's not even a marriage. It's nothing. Father says I married her up, but that's not a marriage. It's not. So it does nothing is accomplished by that.
And a ger can marry him.
Yeah. But one second, the father can marry her to someone that's prohibited to a kayan, and she'll become puzzle, and she'll have that same status as if she was captured. Why? Because let's say she was married once, which the father's claiming. Well, in one of the cases, the father claims she's married and divorced. Now he wants her to marry a kayan gadol. See, it's funny because in the case that we're dealing with, he's not saying that she was married once. He's saying that she was captured. We say we don't trust him. We don't trust him that she was captured. He's saying, but he can marry her as a widow, if he married her once and the husband died, as a widow to a kain gadol, and then she'll become pasul. And since it's still biyada, he has the power to do that because he has the right to marry off his daughter. So that should be trusted. He should be trusted now to say that she's prohibited to eat truma. That even though Rabbi Akiva holds that there's no such thing as a marriage by anyone that's prohibited to marry, except there's one exception to that. And that exception is almana, a widow to a kain gadol, is considered a marriage. Since the father, I know it's prohibited, but since it would still be effective, so then she would be pasul, and the father has the ability to do that. So you say Rabbi Yeshevav. We're following the opinion of Rabbi Yeshevav Damar Bayo v'netzavach al Akiva ben Yosef.
That's Rabbi Akiva, right?
Yeah. It would be problematic for the kayan if she's married to a widow, and the kids would become halalim, and the woman would be puzzled to marry another kohen. Well, let's go and like win over Rabbi Akiva Sheyaimer Kol Shein Lo Bia B'Yisrael Avad Mamzer, which means win over, or maybe it means be victorious for. It means to prove, maybe. Which means that even if it's an almana for a kain gadol, we should say that it's not a valid marriage. As the Rabbi Simai said that any prohibited marriage Rabbi Akiva holds is not effective, except for almana for a kain gadol. Rabbi Yeshevav says even an almana for a kain gadol isn't effective. So which means the father has no rights to do that. Father has no rights to do that. So then we don't trust him when he says that she was captured. Yeah, but I think we have better sources for that. So, if Rabbi Yeshevav is saying his own logic, then what the Gemara is introducing now is that there's a possibility that he's marrying her to someone that's prohibited, that he could have married her to someone that's prohibited because of a positive command. When it says, what are the positive commands? It says, a Mitzri or an Adaimi, they have to wait 3 generations to get married in. That's considered a Chai B'Yaseh, a positive command. That after 3 generations, means before 3 generations after the conversion, they have to, for 3 generations after the conversion, they have to marry each other, and then only afterwards can they marry into the congregation. But what we're saying now is that theoretically, the father could have married her off to someone that's prohibited because of a chiyuv asay, and that Rabbi Akiva never said is not an effective marriage. That Rabbi Akiva would agree is a marriage, and then she would be prohibited to a kohen which can't eat truma. So that's if Rabbi Yesheva is saying his own logic, that Rabbi Akiva holds that even chayve yasei doesn't work. But if he's just excluding what Rabbi Simai held, which was that an almana to a kohen gadol is not an effective marriage, he could still marry her off to chayve yasei, and then she would be prohibited. And so therefore, basically what we're asking is, if the father still has the power to make her prohibited, then he should believe in any other, in any claim that he has that makes her prohibited to a kohen and to truma. Well, Amar Ravashi says, "B'tizbara, do you really think Reisha Mishum de Biyadayu, that the beginning of the Mishnah where he says that I married my daughter and I accepted her divorce is because he's able to repeat that again? If you really don't believe him now, he'll just do it again. Is that the whole reason? Nihid de Biyada Lakadsha, I understand that he can accept Kiddushin, Biyada Lagarsha. He doesn't have the ability to divorce her. The husband has to divorce her. He can't do the divorce. It's someone else that has to do that divorce. He doesn't have full control. I know the father can accept it. Yeah, but I still need I can't force the husband to give the divorce. And also, how do you know that anyone wants her? You still need someone to make the Kiddushin. He can accept the Kiddushin, but how do you know someone wants her? You can't force someone to marry her. Elamar Ravashi says, Reisha Rachmana Hemne Kiravhuna. Go back to what we said before, that there's that the Torah believes the father. Ravuna says that actually this is not quoted on the last page. Ravuna says that how do we know that the father has the ability to make his daughter prohibited? I gave the Torah says that I by the Mitzi Shemra. It says that I gave my daughter to this man, and now he's giving her a bad name, saying that she wasn't a virgin in that case over there. So it says Leish Asra. When he says I gave her to a man, that means he makes her prohibited to the rest of the world. Hazeh, when he says to this man, means he's making her permissible to this man. The Hetera, which means Benesuin Hemne Rachmana. For marriage, the Torah believes the father, and Bishvuya Loihemne, but it never said that the father is trusted about his daughter if she was taken captive or not. He doesn't have. If there's witnesses, fine. But if just the father to come and say, there's no trustworthiness over there. Yeah, they have that famous story. Naftali, I think you told it to me about Reb Moshe by a wedding. The mother told, remember that story? What was the story? It was at a chuppah, and the Kala's mother tells the Masada Kiddushin was Reb Moshe, says that my daughter is a mamzeres. Maybe it was the chassan's mother or something. And Reb Moshe says, we'll talk after, and he finishes the Kiddushin. Anyway. He said that she's not trusted to say this, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, okay. The father, I think, is trusted, but the mother's not trusted. I think that's okay. Misha Amar.
Because we learned this once before, but we're saying now that any woman that was taken is automatically considered.
Yeah, unless
You want something.
Yeah, there was something we had with the daughters of Shmuel that they testified about each other that they were clean. And also, if you don't have any other source that they were captured, if they're the ones that said that they were captured, so then they would also be trusted. If she says, I was captured, but I'm clean, then we trust her. Remember, they said, you wait outside. She told the captors, you wait outside. She went into the yeshiva, and she told them that I was captured and I'm clean, or something. And then...
So unfortunately, in the current state of affairs, this would apply, assuming
it would only matter to a Kohen.
Oh, because otherwise it would have been the one that.
Okay. One should be well freed. Misha Amar, someone that says B'shas Misasai, the time of his death, Yesh li banim, I have sons. Why is he saying that? Because he doesn't want his wife to have to do yibum. So he says, I have sons. So maybe from a different wife or whatever. So Naaman, we trust him. Okay, we don't know them, but okay. Yesh li achim. Let's say he's trying to make his wife have to do yibum. We didn't know that there were any brothers. He says, I have brothers. Ain't a Naaman. That he's not trusted. He's trusted to free her up from yibum, but he's not trusted to make her have to do yibum. Alma, Neman Lahativ, Neman Lesser. The Gemara says we see that he's trusted to free her up from Yibam and not to prohibit her, that she has to do Yibam. Nemas Nisan like Rab Nassan. It looks like our Mishnah doesn't fit with Rab Nassan. The Tanya was started on a Brisa, B'shas Kiddushin. Here it gets, the Brisa is a little more complicated than our Mishnah. What happened in the Brisa is, at the time of the marriage, Amar Yeshli Banim. He's probably an old man. And this woman that he's trying to marry is afraid that he's going to pass away, and she's going to be stuck doing yibum with his brother. He says, "Oh, don't worry about that. Yesh li banim, I have sons. I already have children. There's not going to be no rule of yibum for you." However, b'shas misa malayin li banim. And on his deathbed, he says, "By the way, I don't have any sons." He switched the story on her. B'shas kedushin amar ein li achim. At the time of the marriage, he says, "I don't have any brothers." Okay. Shas misam yesh li achim. But at the time of death, he says, I do have brothers. Now that could be because they were born. Maybe his mother, right? Remember that joke with the insurance thing? He says, the guy comes in to get insurance. He says he's 70 years old. He wants life insurance. They say, I don't sell to 70. He says, what are you talking about? My parents were here. Remember this joke? About the image. So anyway.
Oh, I thought there was the tuxedo joke.
My parents
need
were
to
here.
go to my parents' wedding.
Oh yeah, something like that. Parents were here, you sold it to them. It says, and what? How is that possible? He said, yeah, they were doing it because of the pressure from their parents or something. They were getting, before the wedding, they wanted to get they said, and they were only getting married because their parents were pressuring them. Okay, so here, it could be had a brother. Could be has a brother afterwards, or whatever the case is. And at his deathbed, he says there's a brother. So Neman Lahative, Neman Lesser. We trust him what he said at the Kiddushin, but not what he says at the death. Divrei Rebbe, that's Rebbe's words. Now that Rebbe fits with the Mishnah, that we only trust to permit her, but not to prohibit her. Reb Nassan Raf Neman Lesser, Reb Nassan says that he's also prohibited to make her. He's also trusted to make her prohibited. He said on his deathbed that he doesn't have sons. He said on his deathbed that he has brothers. We trust that. Amar Rava says Shani Hasan keeping the Mishas Misa Kahada Be'em Akushta Kamar. Over there, he at the time of his death, what Rava's logic is that now he feels guilty. He told her a story beforehand, and now it's the moment of truth. He's dying. He has to let her know before it's too late that he doesn't have any sons and that he does have a brother, and she has to do yibum, because she would be relying on his story that he said by Kiddushin. So that's what Rava says. We trust him at the end.
How does she not know if she has sons? This sons with
no, it's not her. It's sons with another wife. Yeah. Amalei Abaya says, "V'lav kol dechinu hashta mahasam de kamar leile dibur amit kush de kamar masnisin like kamar leile dibur like kolshkin." What's going on over here? When we don't know if his story is true because he has two stories. He has one at the marriage and one at the death, and he's saying that you trust the one at the death. And even though that's not such a good story, because he has another version to his story which is totally different. But in the Mishnah, where he only has one story, you're not going to trust the one story, right? He didn't even give you another story. He only told us one story that he has brothers. He never told us that he doesn't have brothers. You're not going to trust it. When he says I don't have brothers, and then he changes his mind, he says he does have brothers, you trust him. When he says I don't have, when he says only once, he says I don't have brothers, you're not going to trust him. He never even said another story. Elamar Abaya says we're talking about something else. We never knew that there were any brothers, and we never knew that there were any sons. Damrinan. Since we don't have any chazaka at all, we don't have any assumptions that we have, any assumed statuses. So Amar Yeshli Banim, if he says that I have sons, so Neman, because the father's believed to say that he has sons. Yeshli Achim, if he says they have brothers, so Ina Neman. He's not believed to say that he has brothers, because Lav Kol Kimnei Das La Kol Yalma. He doesn't have the rights to make him prohibited. However, Brisa, but the Brisa is talking about the Muchzik Lam Ba'achi v'lei Muchzik Lam B'bani, where there's an assumed status that he does have brothers, and there's no assumed status that he has sons. So the Amrin and Mali L'Shaker, because we say Mali L'Shaker, if he wanted to lie, he could have done something else. My kamar, what would he say? L'mifteri miyabam, Matzi Amar Patran Lach Begita. If he wanted to make her permitted from doing yibam, so we could give her a get that should be effective right before his death, and then if she's divorced, she doesn't have to do yibam. So Rebbe Savar Mali L'Shaker Ki Edim Dami. He's claiming now that he on his deathbed in the Brisa, he's saying that he does have sons, and the Brisa is saying that he doesn't have sons and he doesn't have a brother. And we understood that he does have a brother and that he doesn't have sons. So it's the only thing is that he made a claim that he does have that he doesn't have a brother and he doesn't have sons. Now he's changing his mind. So Rebbe that holds that we trust him, we trust what he said at the beginning, because Rebbe holds that if he wanted to free her up, Mali L'Shaka Kedim Dama, that if he wanted to lie, he could have said that he divorced her, and that's just like a testimony. The Edom come and they uproot the chazaka, they uproot the assumption that we had, because Edom are stronger than chazaka. However, Reb Nassan holds Mali L'Shaker, that if he wanted to lie and he could have said that he divorced her, so that's only as strong as chazaka. Ki chazaka dami, layasi chazaka v'ka chazaka legamri. One chazaka can't uproot the other chazaka. The question over here is, how strong is the Mali L'Shaker? If he wanted to lie, he could have said something else. That's a machlekes Rebbe and Reb Nassan. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Rabbi?
Yeah.